Dan, we're live.
And welcome back to another edition of In the Dugout with Mike Stenhouse. I am the aforementioned Mike Stenhouse, and welcome to our show. Lots to cover today. I've got a lot I'm going to be going through in the early part. I'm going to get in depth on a topic I'll tell you about. Then we have a special guest at the bottom of the hour. So let's go through our lineup for today. In just a few minutes, I'm going to get into the 6 big questions surrounding these high school clinics that just all of a sudden popped up. Again, no parent notification, no advance warning. All of a sudden, high schools are basically coercing kids into taking the vaccine, apparently ignoring all prior medical protocol of informed consent and consult your doctor, and they're just indiscriminately, that's a term we used yesterday at release, indiscriminately hurting people into high school kids into getting the vaccines. Why? We're going to talk quite a bit about that in a little while. I've got some state news for you coming up, a lot of little news in states on issues that are important to us, including Caitlin for California. Caitlin Jennings, the former Caitlyn Jenner, the former Bruce Jenner, Olympic decathlon gold medalist. Still weird to think about all this, but anyway, is running for California governor. And I think this is huge. I don't know if it's huge good or huge bad. I think this is huge. We'll talk about that in a little bit, my views on that. We got some more woke madness from the left that we'll cover some quick hits on that. And then in the bottom of the hour, we'll have a special guest from South Kingston, Roland Benjamin, who's going to discuss just a crazy happening down there. I mean, unions in their zeal to get a construction project going, a high school that many South Kingston people don't think they need. But the unions just want more money thrown their way so their union people can have more jobs and pay more dues. They actually did a mailing to students. They sent their pass the bond issue to students, some as young as 5 years old. Where the hell they get the names from and the addresses? So we're going to talk about a South Kingston prominent personality, Roland Benjamin, about that. Tomorrow, 2 guests, Tyler Rowley, great social conservative, young millennial in our state, wrote a recent article that we're going to explore with him, why fathers should take their families to mass. Interesting. So we're going to appeal to Catholic and the religious type out there, maybe to non. If you're not religious, maybe you should hear what Tyler has to say. And then I'll tell you what, I'm really looking forward to our second guest tomorrow. You won't know his name, but we're going to have an initial lesson, all right? You and me together, we're going to have a lesson on all this cryptocurrency, this blockchain. What the hell is it? Why is it so important to our future? Why are people making so much money on it? Are there still opportunities for you? Well, this guy who's coming on is a young millennial professional who's a consultant in the industry, and he's going to give us the ABCs of cryptocurrency, blockchain, and whatever else. All right. Before we get into the heavy hitting today, let's just take a little batting practice. So I'm going to put on my University of Rhode Island hat on, since our guest is from South Kingston, right down there near where University of Rhode Island is. I think it is in South Kingston, right? Isn't you all right in South Kingston, or is it in Kingstown? I don't even know. You got North Kingston, you got North Kingstown, South Kingstown, and you got Kingston. Kingston's just an area, I think. I don't know. But URI is in South Kingstown, right? I don't know. Somebody tell me. Type it in the thing over here if you can. I don't know my geography too well. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing the towns right. It is South Kingstown, right? And North Kingstown, and then it's Kingston without the W, right? I think that's the way it goes. It's confusing, Rhode Island lingo. Okay, batting practice. Quick follow-up on I don't know what you want to call it. My discussion, will be nice and call it my discussion with Dan York last week on his radio show, where he just spent the whole hour trying to make me look bad. And I think I hung in there. But basically, here's the point I was trying to make. I mean, I found the graphic that I don't even know if he got the point I was trying to make. My point was, is Dan McKee, when it comes to COVID, being advised by just the same old insider leftist leaning epidemiologists and medical experts who just want more government control, want more lockdown, want to go slow with reopening? The difference, the difference between Florida and California and Texas and Rhode Island, or is he getting advice outside of it? And my instincts were right. Here is a poll or a survey put out with doctors' leanings, and you can see that the most left-leaning, the most blue-leaning group of doctors in this survey. I don't know if this is America. I guess this is in America. I don't know if this is worldwide or in America. But infectious disease specialists are the most left-leaning, the most Democratic, if you want to consider that left-leaning, versus Republican, of all doctors out there. So, and wouldn't you agree with me that makes sense? That's why all these so-called experts all seem to be singing the same big government playbook, because Democrats believe in big government, Republicans believe in individual freedom and responsibility, those personal liberties. I mean, it makes sense to me. Does it make sense to you? So that's basically what all I was trying to ask. Do we think Dan McKee is getting a varied and diverse set of opinions from his medical professionals on this disease? I don't think so. Dan York was offended by that. I mean, mortally offended by that. And he went after me for a whole hour. You should go listen to that podcast someday. But anyway, this is all I was trying to say. Right? That's all I was trying to say right there. All right, here's another. Speaking of elites and intellectuals and all that, you talk about anticlimactic. I'm, as you may know, I'm a Harvard alum, and I get emails from the university because I'm on their alumni list or whatever. Like they've discovered something new, the Ivy League is announcing that unless something happens, and very well may happen, we're going to return to full athletic competition in sports. Whoop-de-effing do. You're about 9 months behind everybody else, and yet they're trying to put it out there as news. I mean, these elites, they think they've just discovered something, and they're leading something, and they put it out there when they're the last ones to the dance. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, the self-serving attitude that these elites have. All right, a few things on Rhode Island, and just general. We on this show try to just educate a little bit about the benefits of freedom and the lack, and the harm, the wreckage, I guess is the best word, the wreckage of big government control over our lives. And this headline just really struck me the other day, and so I put it in our list for today. This is from the Providence Journal yesterday. Fourth stimulus check on the way, maybe. Some say, who are those? Again, who are those some? Could lift $7 million out of poverty. First of all, do you really think a $1,400 check is going to lift a family permanently out of poverty? I'm sure they could use it. I'm sure we all could use it. But what is poverty and what is prosperity? Poverty is a state. Poverty is a state that's hard to dig out of, where you don't have the capacity, you don't have the work capacity. You maybe have the capacity within you, but at that very minute, you don't have the work opportunities, whether it's because you don't have the proper education, or you don't have a work ethic, or you have some kind of criminal background that prohibits you from getting work. Poverty is a long-term state that we love to fix. And a one-time stimulus check isn't going to raise anybody out of poverty. It might be a short-term nice thing. But who puts these headlines? Who thinks this way? and then the second part of this, and who thinks that it's government that's going to get people out of poverty? The government handouts aren't going to create prosperity. Whether, getting you out of poverty, I don't think so, but government handouts are certainly not going to create prosperity for you. Prosperity is also a state of being where, because of your professional background, educational background, because of your work ethic or your desire to better improve yourself and to make money in the private sector, that you and your family can live comfortably, and happily. Prosperity is not just about money. Prosperity is being happy in the soul, not wanting for anything. I mean, we all would love to have a yacht, but I don't want for or need a yacht to be happy, to be prosperous. Prosperous is a state of being, financially, health, emotionally. And this big government attitude that somehow government handouts and government checks are going to either relieve poverty or create prosperity is what's wrong with all the big government acolytes. You can't achieve that. Now, people cry poverty all the time. I heard on the radio, and I can't verify it, but I heard on the radio that 34% of personal income in this country right now, 34% is through government handouts, stimulus checks, welfare, child care credits, whatever. 34%. Now, I can guarantee you those aren't the wealthy people who are relying on that money. Those are people who are likely to remain in a state of poverty, in my view. Poverty, if you're getting by at some minimal government defined level of sustenance based on handouts, that's not prosperity. You might not call it poverty financially, but I would call it poverty emotionally. Sitting back, doing nothing, taking money from the system, whether it's because of your circumstances need you to take money from the system, or whether you're gaming the system. I'm sorry, but that leaves poverty of the soul. And that's the missing component in so much of the liberal versus conservative debate. Everything is focused on a dollar amount. The dollar is not what defines happiness. When we say, in this country, the pursuit of happiness, it's not just about money and material things. It's happiness. Soul-fulfilling stuff. Freedom is soul-fulfilling. Acting on that freedom and monetizing it is even more soul-fulfilling. It's not soul-fulfilling. You might be intellectually dishonest and say, look at me, I cheated the system, or I'm living off the system. So, again, that headline just tells you so much, that stimulus checks could lift people out of poverty. It is such backward thinking, and it's just not correct. And then when it comes to Rhode Island, and this is the city of Providence, which really defines much of Rhode Island. The economic recovery in Providence ranks among the worst cities in America, 139th out of 180 cities. The Providence employment, and again, that's it. Employment is your way to prosperity and out of poverty. In this state, we reward you for not working. We reward you for having more children in poverty. We pay you, we reward you not to work, whether it's excessive paid time off, policies that we passed a few years ago, whether it's excessive vacation time, especially in union contracts, government union contracts, especially all the ways that those collective bargaining agreements pay people not to work. No wonder. I mean, and now we know the debate with our overly generous unemployment insurance when you combine the state and the federal. You've heard the stories. Restaurants, people can't find work. I mean, can't get people to go back to work. So what happens when you pay people not to work? When you think the government can replace a job, it really can't. All right. Another quick issue here, just a headline, just to follow up on stories. So, like we asked a few weeks ago, was the Derek Chauvin verdict in Minnesota really justice served? Or is it mob? Or was it the mob appeased? And it appears more and more as if it was the mob appeased. One of the jurors was apparently a BLM activist who lied to the judge, to the attorneys when asked about their activist background. Hid it from them so they get on the jury and convict the guy regardless. So again, I think for any number of reasons, you're going to see that verdict overturned or in a new trial out there. Here's one more. Now we're getting into kind of more woke leftist madness. Chieftain, chieftain's not acceptable. My wife went to Ponegants High School, and we've been saying, I wonder when it's going to become the big story that the Ponegants chieftains is no longer going to be acceptable. Well, with everything that's happened in the last year, apparently some tribe, and listen, I nothing against the tribe, but now it's an issue, and now everybody's getting all upset and divisive about it. And there's no reason to be upset and divisive about it. And you might have seen from the article, they're going to form a commission to study names for replacing the chieftain mascot with something less fraught. Less fraught with what? Chieftain is a strong, bold image, one of courage, one of pride, one of strength. So we want to look for a mascot that is fraught with less strength, less pride, and less courage. This is all upside down, everything is. Here's another one. New York. Kids TV show. In an audience. Kids in. I saw the video. I'm not going to play the video. In the audience, they parade out 6 or 8 adults who just strip naked. They take off their trench coats there and just strip naked. See the little kid here in the corner. These are what is it? 6 or 8-year-old kids? What kind of depravity? Why is the left so hung up on sexual things? Just more depravity from the left. And then there's this story from the never land of make-believe. I mean, on a great show, Jeopardy of all places. So look at this headline. Hundreds of former Jeopardy contestants slammed the game show winner for what they thought was a white supremacy symbol. Did you see this one? So look at this guy. I don't know what he's kind of got the okay sign and 3 fingers out across his chest. Apparently they think that's a white supremacy signal. And they riled up the public. They riled up all these former Jeopardy champions. They wrote this letter. They beat this guy down. They decried him publicly. They shamed him on social media. When all he was doing, he was a 3-time winner. Here he is the first time saying, I won once. Here he is the second time saying, I won twice, fingers across. And here he is the third time saying, I won 3 times. To trigger these woke, fanatical leftists takes nothing. And you trigger them into these outrageous actions. They go out and they get hundreds of former Jeopardy champions to decry this guy for just counting the number of times he won. It's really incredible what the woke left does. It really is. Okay. Before we're going to talk more about this tomorrow, but Caitlyn for California. Did you see that Caitlyn Jenner? Now, hear me out on this, announced that he is going to run for governor. All right, so there's the first dilemma here. Bruce Jenner, the former Bruce Jenner, can call himself whatever he wants. If he wants to go by the name Caitlyn, I'll call him Caitlyn. But I really don't know how to handle this. I don't want, we have made such an issue here on this show and that we can't pretend that boys can become girls, that he's can become she's. You can live your life in women's outfit and with women's, body type parts and hormones if you want, but it doesn't change your your XY to an XX chromosome. You're still a he in my book. So while I'll call Caitlyn whatever he wants to be called, I still think he's a he. So I just don't like pretending against reality. The reality is he's a he in my view. Anyway, but that's not the point. So anyway, that's just one of the, but this is what's going to make this so interesting. This race, Caitlyn for California, and shocked the world when Caitlyn decided to run as a Republican. Will this be a game-changing, uncomfortable for sure, but important national state campaign, right? Again, it's a state campaign for governor, but I think it's going to have national implications. We're going to talk more about this tomorrow, but I don't know how conservative Caitlyn is. Caitlyn's running as a Republican. But I did see on the video we'll show you tomorrow that I did see on other news that, he's a transgender and he believes it's not fair for transgender he's who are now she's to compete in women's sports. So Caitlyn is common sense trans, not hung up on some agenda. I'm really curious to see how this works out. I'm really curious to see if Caitlyn Jenner is conservative, what impact a conservative voice and a transgender body, how that's going to be received. Not only by conservatives, but how is the woke left going to handle this? This is going to be fun. This could be very interesting. We're going to follow this, and we're going to talk a lot about this. This could possibly help conservatism. Because this is not your traditional white male. It's an untraditional white male, but it's not your traditional white male messenger putting forth a potentially conservative message. Well, how is that message going? Is that message going to be received better from moderates and the left if it comes from someone like Caitlyn Jenner? Can't wait to see that. All right, final issue just very quick issues before we get, we're going to probably push off Roland Benjamin just a few minutes because a couple things I got to get to. I'm running late. Some quick state news very quickly, since we're talking about Caitlyn Jenner's run for governor in California. Our new hero, Governor Stitt in Oklahoma, withdrawing the state of emergency, as we should be doing here, and most states should be doing. Some states still have a problem. Just like us, hospitalization's down, everything's down. Remove the state of emergency. Nice job, Governor Stitt, Kevin Stitt in Oklahoma. Idaho bans critical race theory. The governor there signed a bill, Governor Brad Little. And then there's great governors like Cuomo keeps sticking his foot in his mouth. Can you imagine that? He's sermonizing to unvaccinated people, and you can see it right here. Maybe you go home and kiss your grandmother and wind up killing your grandmother after he killed how many thousands of them in nursing homes with his horrendous policy of sending infected people back into nursing homes. You just can't make this stuff up. And here I am in Florida, Ron DeSantis. I like this great. He chooses freedom over Fauci. He signed a bill or an executive order, I can't remember which, that said if you try to mandate vaccine passports or make vaccinations a requirement for you to either patronize a business or to participate in school events, I will fine you $5,000 per incident. The opposite here in Rhode Island. So I'm going to spend about maybe 10 minutes on this, and we'll get to our guest maybe 5 minutes late. I don't know if Roland has zoomed in yet, but we'll get to him about 10 minutes. But what I want to share with you now, so keep in mind what you just saw from Governor DeSantis. And in our state, we have now set up these vaccination clinics in high schools, pressuring kids to get vaccines. And if you're 16 and 17 years old, you don't need your parents' consent, which we think is against the law, as I'm going to show you right here. So I want to spend some time on this. Here is our post from yesterday. We made a call. Of course, no one's going to listen to us, but we called on the suspension of these indiscriminate high school vaccine clinics. No medical procedure, okay? No medical procedure is right for everybody. There are always allergies, there are special conditions, there are medical histories. And we're going to go through this, but you don't hear this from our governor, from mayors, Governor McKee, Mayor Hopkins, other superintendents we've heard. Everybody get the vaccine, get the vaccine. And no, there are a lot of legal, as you see here, there are a lot of legal, moral, and ethical and medical questions to ask here. I see that our guest has joined us, but Roland, please wait just a few minutes. I'll get right to you. So we called on the governor and mayor, the Department of Health, to end these vaccines until we know the answer to some of these questions that surround this. These are questions I've talked to our legal experts, our medical experts. Why are we rushing to vaccinate every eligible student? It may not be medically safe, it may not be legal, but it certainly is not moral to bypass parents of 16 and 17-year-olds in schools. From a legal perspective, as you know, one of our board members, Judge Robert Flanders, former Associate Justice Supreme Court, the state law says that kids 16 and up can consent to routine or emergency medical procedures or surgical procedures. And a lot of people took that as, well, that includes the vaccine. Well, it can be argued legally, no. These emergency use vaccines are not fully FDA approved. They're sort of, in a way, experimental still because we don't know the long-term effects. Nobody knows them yet. So they're not routine in that regard. And it's certainly not an emergency, even though we're in a state of emergency. It's really not, it's not a medical emergency where these kids are at risk of losing life or limb. So legally, we would argue that in this case, 16-year-olds and up 16 and 17, do not have the right to bypass their parents. So we asked one of the questions, will the Department of Health put out their legal opinion on this? Who advised them and what did they say? What is their argument? We just gave you ours. What is their argument? From a medical perspective, you've all heard of informed consent. We've all heard of consult your doctor before doing this, taking this pill or undergoing that procedure. They seem to have forgotten all that stuff. This is normal medical practice. And we're just ignoring it right now. Look, teenagers don't really have any risk of severe consequence, even if they caught the coronavirus. The risk of an adverse medical reaction to the vaccine is much higher than it is to just a regular flu vaccine. We can't just think of these things as harmless flu vaccines. We've showed you the data on the show. The potential long-term risks of these vaccines are not known yet. That's why it's so, quote, experimental. If a teenager has had the infection in the past, he or she has as much, if not more, antibody protection than they would ever get from a vaccine. And evidence shows that people who have recovered from the virus, from an infection, and then get a vaccine are even at more increased risk because now you've like double the antibodies. And sometimes that's not good. And with any vaccine, it's not automatically the right answer for every person, for every student. It's not out there. Again, this was from Dr. Andrew Boston, our Brown University credentialed epidemiologist. All these bullet points here are medical questions, that should be raised in considering this. So what data, what studies does the Department of Health use to counter this? That's the another question. Second question, are the school districts making informed consent? Are they advising the kids of the potential risks of this vaccine? Are they telling them that, there's more instances of severe reactions than there are to flu shots? From a moral perspective, there's plenty. Again, why are parents being bypassed? Why are we creating this division? Just ask for parents' consent and everybody would be happy. There would be no problem. But now we're pitting kid against parent. We're opening up kids to bullying. Maybe the parent doesn't want them to, but their students, their fellow students or teachers or administrators or coaches encourage them to get the shot when their parents don't want them to. Why are we creating this kind of division? And how are we going to protect against this kind of bullying or coercion in schools? I think school departments need to answer that. And why, whether it's legal or not, why are parents? What is the justification for parents being bypassed? Family decisions are healthy decisions. Informed decisions are healthy decisions. Most 16-year-olds don't have a grasp of their medical history like their parents do. Why are we bypassing? Why are we alienating and antagonizing parents? And then lastly, and they've said it in the letter, the governor said it. Is this all just a way to pressure you to get it, or else you can't go to your junior or senior prom, you can't go to graduation ceremony? That's coercion, that's bullying, that's extortion. I don't know, folks, this isn't right. We should not be indiscriminately rushing. There are some serious questions, potentially life-threatening questions that need to be answered, moral questions, ethical questions, legal questions. Talk about it with your kids. And let's involve the family. Speaking of kids, let's bring on our special guest for today, Mr. Roland Benjamin. Roland, please unmute yourself and welcome to In the Dugout.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Well, it's been a long time. Just for disclosure, right? Roland was a board member of the organization I first came in to run when I got into the movement, the old Ocean State Policy Research Institute. And many thanks to you and your board for the hard work there, and to Bill Felkner. And then the center sort of became an offshoot of that. But Roland, I see you're in the dugout and you've got your cap on. What do you got for us today?
It's my son is graduating from Hendricken in a couple months. So in between that and Quiddy Pay making a first round draft appearance, thought I'd celebrate it a little bit.
Yeah, that was awesome about him. I haven't read his life story yet, but I understand Pay has an amazing background. But congratulations to your son.
Yeah. And my oldest son graduated from there a couple years ago and spent some time in I think one class with Quiddy. So it was it's been a pretty exciting time.
Especially so you're a South Kingston resident.
Yep.
And a lot of South Kingston residents are outraged because of this story, this incident, which was captured in this story last week. So basically, I'll tell it quickly, you add to it, but basically the unions in their verve to get a bond referenda, for a new high school construction, passed,
right,
sent mailers, and somehow they obtained names and addresses of students and addressed mailers to students, many of whom don't even vote, obviously, some as young as 5 years old. And
right.
Apparently this whole thing has created a lot of outrage and controversy in the city. Here's the article. There's the flyer right here that was sent out. Here's the article that was in the Independent. This was written 6-7 days ago. Tell us what's happened since then and add to the story, Roland.
Yeah, so basically, you pretty much got it right. Although the background is this facility bond is a pretty contentious issue. In fact, the last day of voting on it is today.
Right. So people, it's all vote.
Yeah, and it's a divisive issue in town as it is.
Okay.
There's a lot of enthusiasm to reject the bond anyway, and that creates panic within kind of the insider world to say we got to get our word out, we've got to pull out all the stops, and I think there was an urgency to get something out quickly, and somehow data got shared with an outside agency, and I work with data all the time trying to figure out how to put mailing lists together. It's a very easy process to grab the wrong field and put it on a label, and somebody did that. Now, had they not made the mistake of putting a child's name on a mailer, we might never have known where they got this information, and it kind of makes me think it happens more frequently than we're aware.
Yeah, I want to get into that, but I want to take a step back first and let's try.
Sure.
Now, you've been a South Kensington resident for quite a while, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You are on the Republican Town Committee, I believe.
I am. I had been the chair a while back, and been involved ever since.
All right. Had you ever been in local government, either on the
I
school
have,
board or town?
yeah.
I thought I remember that. Yeah.
In 2017, I filled a vacancy. I was appointed for a vacancy by largely it was 4 Democrats out of a 5-member town council appointed me to fill a vacancy based on how much work I had done with the school district. Completely, it was a time, kind of a more innocent time, I guess, when there was less partisanship and less vitriol around. Although there was plenty
less
of it then.
wokeness, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were small groups that came after me, but then in 2017 into 18, I was asked to be the chair of that committee. So I was intimately involved with the.
All right. So I just want to establish you're involved. You're not an insider guy, but you've been, how this all works. Yeah. You know how government works. So you probably dealt with unions. Yep. And contracts and whatnot with the various teacher, police, and fire and whatever else. Right. And in the article, when asked, it said the one of the unions said that they got the list from another union.
Right.
Is that still the prevailing?
I think theory? A lot of that is no one's really saying where it came from. And they're both the town council and the school committee have both said we're going to investigate this.
Are those going to be real investigations, do you think?
Well, the school committee sounds a little less enthusiastic about getting to the bottom of it. They held a meeting on Friday. This is it was I don't know if it was considered an emergency meeting or not, but it was a short notice meeting. They didn't even put an agenda on the public section of the meeting to discuss the investigation in open meeting. So there was a lot of people looking to get some information at this point, 6 days after their child may have received a letter. How was this stuff shared? And there's some pretty troubling stories, including things like information about guardians that is not necessarily something that people want in public.
Let me read some excerpts from the story on that. It says the main worry for parents, they say, is that their children's personal information, including home address, was provided to the AFL-CIO, which paid for and authorized the mailer. The return address is that. According to a lawyer for the school committee, this is not against the law for requests to provide this information. And you're right, this information can also include, information about their extracurricular activities and all kinds of other school-related information that you would think would have to be protected information. I'm trying to find the excerpt so I can read more. Right. But so my first question is, if this policy exists that allows this information to be shared, shouldn't that be changed?
Well, it's debatable whether it should be. It's even allowed. They're taking the position that it should be allowed based on, or that it is allowed based on the current. and regardless of whether or not there's a legal loophole for them to have done this, and they kind of hide behind the idea that you might authorize your student's name, your child's name, to be sent to the paper if they're an athlete or whatever. Um, no matter what policy they write, and this was the big thing that they held on Friday, a meeting that they held on Friday, all they're trying to do is figure out a way to actually codify that this was legal. They're not trying to even make it illegal. And the reality of it is, what's really animating parents is that I don't care what option you might pick when you're signing terms and conditions or whatever, no one wants their kids' information sent to a political special interest group.
Yeah. So according to the article, it says policy 8220.
Yeah.
That you're allowed to give directory information. Now, you bring up an interesting case. You know, if somebody's doing a story on a student athlete who became all state, okay, give me a little background on the student. But I'm sure that wasn't meant to include, just give me a database dump, right, of everybody.
That's exactly right.
But that directory information supposedly includes a student's. Listen to this, folks. This is what's they gave out or could be given out. The directory information includes a student's name, participation in recognized activities in sports, address, telephone, email, weight and height for athletic team members, their photograph, their degrees, their honors, their awards, their date and place of birth, and dates of attendance and grade level. I mean, what else is there to know about a person?
Yeah, social security number, maybe. I don't know. But in reality, that's what even and to some of the members of the committee's credit, they did discuss the folly of some of that information ever being shared, and that's important to state. But the reality of it is, even if any of it is shared, even a name and an address shouldn't go out for the purposes that it went out. It's we get in these solicitation business when you're trying to convince voters to listen to your idea, whatever. There's data everywhere, and it's always tempting, but you gotta be careful with this stuff. This is just careless. It's not even what it doesn't. The legalities of it matter, but the recklessness of it. I got an email today from the school district that it was. I'm sure somehow, I'm never too concerned that I never know how somebody gets my contact information, but it's been on a website or two or three or four at some point, so it doesn't surprise me. But this one was just shared from a town database that I was on, something else I was involved with, made it to the school committee as part of the campaign to work on inform on the facility bond. So I get this email. Now I don't have a kid in the system anymore, so I'm not sure how I'm on their listserv, and it's just there. Now it's like a free flow of information that's within a bubble that really it concerns me. And then once you start letting it out of that bubble, and it's got kids' information, I think that's what we're going to see some real fall.
We know the system's going to try to say this was legal, the insider cronies and the status quo swamp in South Kingston. I'm sure you've got a swamp just like every state and city and town does, right?
We have a great swamp.
I'm sure. Yeah, you've got real ones too.
Yeah, right.
So the superintendent, Linda Savastano, in her statement, according to the article, said, while we did not share this information directly with anyone listed on this mail, there's a little lawyer talk right there.
Yeah, right.
Our policies do allow us to share directory information. I will recommend to the school committee that they review these policies as soon as possible. So she's all but admitting, we let the information out to somebody else, not the people who ended up using it, but to somebody else. I mean, how are you not out? I mean, should Linda Savastano resign? Should she be fired? Is she on the hot seat, or do you think this is not really her issue?
Well, I'll tell you, when I served as a chair, and we were with a prior superintendent, I'll tell you this: the same people that are sitting in defending this today would have been asking for serious accountability, whether that meant forced to resign or some kind of disciplinary action. I don't know. So there's a double standard, of course, that we're seeing already. Whether I think she should resign or not, I don't know, mistakes
All right, let's
happen.
investigate a little further. If there was a database dump, which there appears to have been, right?
Mhm.
Agreed? Appears to be,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Who would have been authorized? I mean, where would that come from? The superintendent's office, a school principal's office, a school
Someplace in
committee?
administration, it has to be in administration, and the policies require that somebody approves it if it's for a certain
So
use.
ultimately, the buck would have to stop with the superintendent on this
Yeah, right,
or her staff.
right, right. And then somebody would need to ask for it. And someone, it needs to be asked for, provided, and approved. Those are three people.
All right. So while you and I agree that a one-off background for a story about a child,
Yeah.
you know, who for the
But like
news
even
or
a simple one like the honor roll or something, any
honor
of that stuff.
roll or something like that,
Nobody's
might, you
worried
know,
about
might,
that.
okay, that might be a directory information, but a mass dump, and especially for political purposes,
It in a pretty
is
divisive and contentious issue.
I
Yeah.
know, yeah, that's political.
Yeah.
It is absolutely unacceptable.
Right.
So should there be calls? So my question is, what's going to happen? Is Linda Savastano going to be held accountable? Whether she started or not, she's ultimately, the buck has to stop with her.
Yeah.
And B, is there going to be a push to change this policy, or at least clarify this policy,
Yeah. Well, I don't know that
so
there's,
something like this doesn't happen again?
I'm not totally convinced there's the within the decision makers. Um, I don't know if there's the will to do even both of those.
So
At
this
least
really
on the
hasn't caught
committee.
fire and become a big issue among
Oh,
parents.
it's caught fire, but whether that goes all the way up to termination or resignation or whatever, even the policy changes, I still haven't heard anyone say that the policy changes that have already been, there's already been a first draft read in public. All they do is allow for the release of directory information in certain circumstances. So they don't, and they just redefine when it's been approved by a parent as an opt-in or an opt-out, and then tweak some of the information. Nothing
Right.
in
And
the
that was
process has
another thing
happened.
they said. Yeah, parents can opt out of having their kids. But I
Right.
mean, how many parents know about this? Right. I mean,
I don't know, how many terms and conditions do you sign that
right.
you
Exactly.
right.
So it
So
seems to
that's
me like there's got to be, so let me ask, I'm the student on the town council. I mean, well, first let me ask this: whose issue really is this? Is this is this a town
it's
council issue, or is this a school committee issue? How do you see it?
well, the breach, they they've asked not to call it a breach, but it's a breach, whether it's a literal data breach or a breach of trust, either one.
Right.
This breach is the responsibility of the school district. The question whether they can effectively investigate it is a whole different issue. And our town council is taking it very seriously, have indicated that they want our own town solicitor to do an investigation, and have explicitly stated the use of subpoena power to learn the basic three questions: who asked for it, who provided it, who approved it. Um, and hopefully they'll get to something. I think I can't describe the
Who's leading
chaos.
the charge on the town? Is there a hero on the town council who's really leading the charge you want to give some
The,
kudos to right now?
yeah, sure. There's two town council members who have been public in their outrage. One is Deb Bergner and the other is Jess Rose. Both have really kind of said this is outrageous. And on the committee, the probably one of the more on the school committee, one of the more outspoken and genuine responses I've seen, and I know quite a few of them, but Paula Whitford was pretty much, you could actually feel her rage when addressing the superintendent. So there's some good voices here, but I do, once lawyers get involved and the wagons
Everybody
start to get
climbs up.
circle, it's going to end up coming down to something like, this was a simple mistake, we're sorry, we're going to try to figure out how this can't happen again, and then if we're not careful, people forget it. And that's,
All right, Roland.
I mean,
Last
that's one of the
question.
reasons.
Last
Yeah.
question. Two questions. So is the bond referendum going to pass or not today?
Well, I've been
Prediction.
involved. There's actually a couple of groups that have worked to defeat it. And like we've seen it with some success in towns like North Kingstown and Westerly, when they've defeated local bonds, those groups are cross-partisan, and they don't always have the same reasons for opposing something, but we've been working to get that. I think we're close. I think we had a budget referendum last year, which was, by state law or by town charter. I mean, you can come in and ask for an amendment to the budget after it's passed. We missed that vote by 17 votes. Now there's 30,000 people here, 20,000 active voters, and we were within 17. I think there's more energy and more focus on our side than then. So I'm hoping that between the actual real messages of why this is not a good facility plan and a bond associated with it, coupled with all this chaos about it just looks like desperation. It looks like
it does.
too much urgency on something, and it just
was
makes people distrustful, so.
All right, well, but we'll have you back on to tell us how this all turns out, whether there is any action, whether there is any accountability or change to the policy at the school. Roland Benjamin, thanks for joining us and updating.
Thanks, Mike.
South Kingston. Okay, Roland, take care. Wow. So again, schools with an agenda, school districts, just like when I'm going to go back just for a few minutes to these vaccinations without parental consent at high schools issue. We're going to look at the Nuremberg Code in just a minute on this. But again, here you see students being used politically without their parents' knowledge or direct consent. This has got to stop. This has got to stop. Parents need to start taking control. We've seen stories in Texas and can't remember, was it Oklahoma, where parents went in and literally in an instant took over school boards, whether it was critical race theory or whatever the issue was. This is what needs to happen. And I think again, the left and the big governments and their union allies and the media have gone too far. And I think parents are waking up. They're not woke, they're waking up. They're waking up and they're leaving the never, never land of make-believe that many of them have been in. And I think they're seeing the real world threats that the swamp, which I define as the big government and all their media and corporate and advocacy group allies, that the swamp poses for families and for children and for our society. So let's go back to the issue of these high school vaccinations without proper medical consent, without proper parental consent, and perhaps even without proper legal authority. I don't know if you can read this. Often our images don't come up. But this is the Nuremberg Code. And the Nuremberg Code of Ethics was developed after World War II, after the atrocities that the Germans in the concentration camps and elsewhere perpetrated, supposedly for medical knowledge, but the experiments tried on people, horrendous stuff. I don't have to tell you. So there was this code, these 10 codes developed in 1947 after the Nuremberg trials to follow. And the first one, if you can read it here, the voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. Allowing for bullying, coercion from students, coercion from faculty, coaches, teachers, to bully these kids into getting a vaccine when they or their family might not be inclined to have it happen is a direct violation of the Nuremberg Code. I'm in an awkward situation right here. I'm the only one home. Larry, fill in for 3 seconds. I've got to answer a doorbell. I know who it is. I've got to answer. I'll be right back.
Well, folks, I'm on the mic. Here I am saying hello. Stan has answered the doorbell. And, summing up some of the things we talked about today is, it's disappointing how parental rights are being abused across our state. It's upsetting to me. I'm not a parent myself, but looking at what's going on. Hey, Stan, welcome back. I was just saying how upset I was about the high school vaccination athletics and parental rights being violated. If I was a parent,
and the Nuremberg Code being violated.
Right there. All right, back to you, boss.
All right. And they're talking about experiments here. Number 4, the experiment should be so conducted to avoid unnecessary physical and mental suffering. Well, we know there are dangers to these vaccines, perhaps more so. Well, there's also one of the, I don't know which one, I can't read it right now, but it also says that the risk of the treatment should not exceed the risk of not having a treatment. Well, it's not clear in this case. The risk of the vaccine for young, healthy 16, 17-year-olds actually might be more severe than the risk of contracting the coronavirus. Therefore, it may not be even a recommended treatment. So when it says the experiment should be so conducted as to avoid all unnecessary physical and mental suffering and injury, that may not be the case. Number 6 deals with that risk. Number 10, informed consent more. Pull out of the treatment if they start getting nervous. I can't imagine that administrators, they're so eager to jab kids indiscriminately. And soon it's going to be 12 to 16-year-olds. We know that's coming soon. But think, as one of somebody just wrote in our YouTube, Jay Doerr, just think of the family divisions that this is causing. Student against parent, parent against parent. They've just thrown this in our face indiscriminately, in parents' faces. Kids are undoubtedly being pressured by the woke left, which dominates our schools. Some parents want to be a little more cautious, a little more circumvent before agreeing. They may ultimately agree, but they need to do their homework. Parents may disagree, but it's created a moment that didn't have to exist. Instead of leisurely allowing people to sign up and take vaccines as they and or their families decide, now they're putting it right in our face. And students or parents are forced to make decisions they may not be ready to make. And it's going to create division. I mean, the insensitivity of the governor, of the Department of Health, of these mayors, of these school districts that are just implementing these programs. Just all of a sudden, here are these clinics, and parents, you got to deal with it right now. Whether you're ready to, whether you're informed, you have to deal with it, because your kid's going to come home and say, I want a vaccine, or your kid's going to defy you and say, screw you, I'm getting one anyway. What the hell is that? This is outrageous. Going after minors, putting parents in this situation, putting minors in this situation. Medical risks, legal authority, moral, ethics. It's violating not just the Nuremberg Code, but it's violating as I said in the beginning, violating the very principles of informed consent. You can't see a commercial about a drug or a treatment without saying, consult your doctor first. I haven't heard one of these bastards say, consult your doctor before you get a vaccine. Just go get a vaccine. It's outrageous. And as the attorney on a radio show said last week, if there is a serious adverse reaction, an event, I would hate to be that government official, that government entity that has to defend itself against that for acting so indiscriminately and with such insensitivity. We pray it doesn't come to that, but they've set themselves up for that possibility. The government is trying to become the parent. In many communities, the government has replaced the father. We know that. Tomorrow, we're going to have a guest on who's going to talk about why fathers need to bring their families to church. But the government has tried to replace the father. The single mom is the most adored person in the leftist woke society. The more kids, the more poverty, the more dependency, the better. Wrong. Now the government wants to start replacing all parental rights. And this isn't the first instance. You just saw it in South Kingston. The government decided, hey, we can send out kids' names and addresses and whatever information for political purposes. Who the hell cares about private rights or parental rights or privacy? The hell's going on out here? And we're just sitting back and letting it all be? So tomorrow, 2 guests. One guest, Tyler Rowley, my father's. I'll read the article tomorrow. I haven't read it. Well, fathers should bring their children to church, or mass, as he calls it. Number 2, we're going to learn about cryptocurrency. I'm going to have more on the Caitlin for California campaign, and I'll actually show you some of Caitlin's campaign video. A great video, provocative video. It's going to, listen, this Caitlin for California campaign is going to have national implications. Again, I don't know how they're going to turn out, but it's going to have national implications. This is such an unusual situation. So uncomfortable, but yet so important. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Thursday, Dr. Andrew Bostrom, of course, more with Chris Carlozzi from the National Federation of Independent Businesses about just some of the anti-business policies that the legislature and the governor are supporting. More about that. So I thank you today for, again, a spirited debate. If you're a parent, right at the top of our page, go to our website, rifreedom.org. Right at the top is our 6 big questions for any parent considering whether or not or dealing with the issue of their kids being coerced into getting vaccines via their high school. All right, it's a big issue. And remember, it was because of our center that this issue has had the statewide problem. Is it Health Choices Rhode Island, Larry, Amy Gardner's group?
Correct. Health Choice of Rhode.
Health Choice Rhode Island, the first raised awareness. They don't have the megaphone that we have, made us aware of it. We were then the first media entity. We had parents on, we put out media releases, and now it's the talk of the radio. It's the talk of the state. And it's led to discussions across the state. And it's because we were the first to really break this story. Amy Gardner's group was the first group to really make people aware of it, but we were the first really out there. This is what we do. We're not afraid to challenge the status quo like the rest of the media is. We broke the ice, and now everybody's talking about it. This is what you get within the Dugout. This is what you get with our center. This is what you get with me.